Agenda items. Who had vouchers for this month?
I did. Okay. Everything looked to be in shop shape, and I would make a motion to go ahead and approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Community comments. Is there anyone down for community comments? All right. The next item is the administrative department reports.
Well, I can begin, and I know that others in the room probably will speak to this. Today was the first day for new staff to come back. We had, I believe it was 12 or 13 in all. I thought it was a very productive day. They learned a lot of things they probably have now either forgotten or semi-forgotten because they had a lot of stuff to get through today. And that in addition to getting themselves ready for a big job that is teaching. So today was first day for new staff. All staff report back tomorrow. And then the glorious day of next Monday, the 26th, parents sending their kids back to school. I know I feel that way. Happens on next Monday. And we're full speed ahead. We are already fully underway with athletics. So we are building in fields and courts and whatever full of activity already. So lots of fun stuff happening. Josh?
Okay. At the high school, we did some repairs on the concrete going into the front entrance of the building, also the main entrances. Basically, wherever kids are entering the building, the concrete was in need of a little bit of repair. That is all done and ready to go. We do have some landscaping projects that are going to be happening probably throughout September. Wasn't able to get all of that done before the school year, but we'll get a little facelift out there as well. Our staff lounge makeover is almost complete with new flooring and cabinets in there. Looks great, and the staff that have been in and out are really excited about having a nice place to have lunch. We have freshman orientation coming up on Thursday. It's a real nice opportunity for the freshmen to come in. They get their schedules. They have different shifts, different sessions that they go through to learn about what's going on at the school. It really kind of alleviates some of their stress about the first day of school. So it's been very successful in the past, and we're looking forward to that day. In terms of the in-service days at the high school, the focus for the next upcoming days, probably similar to the other buildings as well, creating awareness about trauma kids, TSS from the seminars and trainings that we've had this summer. Using PBIS data, positive behavior interventions to help improve our overall school climate with the kids. And then we're really going to look hard at our teaching practices with block scheduling and how we can become better as a staff and just get a little, take a new look at block scheduling and make sure that all of our staff have been properly trained in what's going on to be a good teacher. All 6 of our fall sports teams are currently underway, and we had our first home event of the season. We had a girls' tennis match today that went on all day long up at the high school. Upcoming events, we've got a ton of sporting events, and I would just encourage people. The school calendar is very good, but the school app is the best place to go for updated information. There are constantly changes going on, not on our end, but with other schools that oftentimes wind up competing against us. We just had a team drop out of our volleyball scrimmage on Saturday, for instance. Nothing that we did, but those changes always get updated on the app, and so it's as current as possible. We've got the Miss Amery Talent Show on Saturday night and the Pie and Ice Cream Social, so that'll be a great event. And then first day will be students next Monday. Thank you.
At the middle school, we have 6th grade orientation and 7th and 8th grade open house tomorrow at 4:30 to 6:30. So we're pretty excited for that, and it's a big transition time for our 6th graders coming into a new building. So we'll be covering everything from how to open up their locker, how their classes work, to computer expectations that as they change from a little bit more one-to-one and taking them home and what have you. We have a lot of similar staff training as Josh in all the buildings. We call them kind of like the big 3, which would primarily be PBIS, our behavioral intervention and supports, trying to be as proactive as we can. Also, trauma-informed care is going to be a huge major focus in the district. And then the PLC process, and really taking a look at how are our students doing. Let's look at our data. Let's talk and work collaboratively to improve instruction as much as we can for every student. And so those are pretty much what our staff trainings are going to be this year, and we're going to be gearing up with some of our staff trainings tomorrow and on Wednesday. And then, we have sports coming up too, middle school football. Ours don't start quite yet. I think our first football practice is on Wednesday, and then the others will follow. So we're excited. We have volleyball and cross-country kicking off in our building. And I guess the other big event would be on 9/11, on September 11th, coming up here in just a few weeks. Ms. Schock and I will be hosting our annual memorial program. And if you haven't been to that, it's open to the public. It's right away in the morning, starts at about 8:30. And it's a nice way to show our appreciation to not only those that gave their lives that day, but also to our local police officers and firefighters and emergency responders, and to all those people that in the VFW and that are out, just showing them all the different appreciation they've done, and that goes a long way. And I know a lot of people ask, well, do those kids even know what it is? And they really don't right away. But between Orr and I, we spent a lot of time talking about what's that about, and just making sure they understand what that is and how we can move forward and all work together. So that's coming up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. It's kind of like none of us were, well, I don't think any of us were around during Pearl Harbor, but we all learned about it. We all knew about it. So it's definitely that kind of thought process. Along with all of the things that Josh and Tom have talked about, the intermediate school will be working on as well. We had a little bit of winter kill on some plants and shrubs out in front of the building. And so we pulled them out and kind of did a refresh and did more of a less is more type idea. And it just looks really clean and neat out there. So I really appreciate the help that we got from our grounds people. We did a little painting as well at the intermediate school. Hard to believe that the new school needed some painting, but it did. And then Christy and I were very busy putting together all of those curriculum orders that come in after the 1st of July and all the orders from around the buildings, and so getting those into the right place. And then open house for our students, 3rd through 5th grade, including AIM, will be Wednesday the 21st from 3 to 4:30.
Okay, Leon Elementary School. To begin with, I'd like to talk about the big three that everybody else talked about, but specifically the work that was done this summer by the staff. There were several staff members that came in and worked on curriculum, worked on PBIS, Tier 1 and Tier 2. We worked on the new Stop and Think room, which I will be talking about at a future date with all of you. They worked on I can statements, our goals for PLC. So there was a lot of summer work done that is moving forward into the new year that will support the big three that Dr. Derfler talked about in his welcome back letter to all of the staff. As Ms. Schock said, we have a meet and greet on Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 at the elementary school, which is open for all students. Many 4K parents have asked, are our kids included in that? And they are certainly welcome, but our 4K families get an individual conference with the teachers, so if they're not able to make the 4K, the meet and greet on Wednesday, that is perfectly fine because they get one-on-one attention with their classroom teacher. We have 7 new staff members at Leon Elementary School and 2 new paraeducators. So we're excited to welcome them, even though we're sad to see the retirements that took place last year. And last but not least, there's a little remodeling still taking place at the elementary school in what we call the J wing, which is the big square at the back of the building. Staff were just able to get into their classrooms last Thursday, I believe, which makes elementary teachers full of anxiety. But, I was telling Sean this morning when I came into work yesterday, and when I drove into the parking lot, the elementary parking lot was completely full both Saturday and Sunday. And it just goes to show the work that our staff puts in preparation for the new year. So especially those ladies that were located in the J Wing. So it's looking absolutely beautiful. It's pretty much all Montessori and PBL out there now. The outside of the building still looks a little scary, but we have a meeting on Wednesday to talk to the construction company to see what that's going to look like as far as kids entering and exiting onto the playground, and for the end of the day dismissal, because they've been using the building for storage, which is understandable, but now they're going to have to figure something else out. So anyway, that's it for the elementary school. It was a very, very awesome, busy summer.
In pupil services, a lot here echoes the support of what we can do to get up and running in all the schools. So that means case management of IEPs, assigning those, looking to find the best fit between service, student, provider, having those conversations, and then making sure that the services can be delivered within the schedule that that student ultimately gets, whether that's general ed or special ed. For our staff training, upcoming tomorrow, we're going to be in the afternoon and have some training with all our special education staff. Special education model forms changes year to year, so there's some procedural review that we'll have to do in terms of form changes through DPI, and then OASIS, which is our data reporting system for IEPs and evaluations. Where you'll hear a little bit more from me later on restraint and seclusion documentation, which we're also excited to move to OASIS, which is our IEP data reporting system, and get that into a system. Anytime that we can use a more robustly a system that's already in place, I think that's an efficient use. So we're going to work through and do that this year. We also have held a couple IEP meetings and are in the process of scheduling a couple more within the first week of school, really, again, to support those transitions that a couple of administrators here have already mentioned, that there's students that just need more support in making that leap, whether it's a grade level, whether it's a different provider or teacher. And finally, just supporting teachers, scheduling equipment, an audiologist visiting, making contact with those speech language pathologists and related service providers, just making sure that we're there supporting teachers so that when they start on Monday that they're set to go as much as possible, whether it's a student that's just general ed and doesn't need a lot of sports, or our most intensive kids that certainly do need some special equipment to access their education.
I just want to add one other thing. I want to give a shout out to Laura Sjogren and to all the teachers and support staff and custodians and everyone who made summer school work. And I don't think that people quite realize, if they aren't in the school, how busy the schools are in the summer. Basically, school got out, extended because of a lot of the weather, and then the next day we turn right around, or next Monday, and boom, here came summer school. Just full with really creative classes, some remedial classes, kids getting help where they needed it. Ran all through June, and then in July we had swimming lessons, and kids really busy with that. And then we have summer school in August, and basically summer school just ended like a little over a week ago. And there's a lot of great people, but Laura Sjogren has done an outstanding job coordinating that program, and she deserves a lot of credit for making it really successful. So just wanted to mention that. I didn't. We should have, but yeah.
All right, thank you. The next report is the AGR report by Cheryl Meyer, which I'm guessing stands for Achievement Gap Report? Okay.
Close, very close. I have to look that up every year.
Okay.
It stands for Achievement Guarantee.
Oh, okay.
So Achievement Guarantee Reduction.
Oh, all right. Well, I got the A right.
Oh, boy. You got the A right. I hope I have it right. I don't even have that paper here. Anyway, we have to report twice a year to the school board, and so this is from its spring reporting. And so, am I clicking
I gotcha.
You can, okay. So what you're going to see is the same kind of chart that you've seen every year, and I'm going to be reporting on kindergarten, first and second grade in reading and math, and Orally is going to report on third grade. So we feel that we set pretty lofty goals in reading and in math, and what you're going to look like is this far right column, the students that met the goals. So our goal is 80% in kindergarten, first and second grade. And as you can see in reading, we were close to the goal at 76.1% in reading. And in math, we were at 86.5%. And that theme carries through the whole elementary school. Reading fell just short of the goal, and math went above the goal. So in that regard, I'd like you to know that we did spend time this summer talking about what we're going to do to really specifically hone in on our reading data, because we want to make sure that we are helping all students gain access to good reading instruction, which we believe they do, but we want to be using the data to really zero in on those kids that need intervention and specific types of intervention. So we did spend time this summer looking at that. So that's kindergarten. And the next slide will show you first grade. First grade is always our grade level that is kind of our stickler in reading. We're at 66.6% of reaching the goal. But I have talked to you about this before, that reading by the end of third grade is when all kids should be learning to read or have that ability to read. So you read to learn or you learn to read from pre-K, well, really K to 3, and then from above that you read to learn. So again, reading was 66.6%, and in math it was 84.3% that met the goal. And in second grade, we had 78% of our kids meet the reading goal, and 81% of our kids met the math goal. So do you have any questions?
Has this been a shift, Cheryl, in, did we used to have more kids reverse that?
Yes.
That's the reading goal and
Yes.
not so much the math. So do we think that we've put quite a bit more emphasis on the math and getting those kids up to that goal? And then, I mean, you only have so many hours in a day. So.
Right. Honestly, I think we still have we do a lot with reading. We really do. We did address the math goal, and we did see the progress that they have made, and we have made some nice gains. But and part of it, really, Shar, is the way we're reporting it. We're reporting it based on one assessment. It's Ames Web. It's a composite score, so it's not taking down the individual skill levels of kids, which is what we look at when we service them. You know, can they rhyme? They can't rhyme. We're going to focus on rhyming. That's what their intervention is going to be. So I think we'll relook at that. But what is really a truer reporting system or diagnostic assessment for us is what's called Fountas and Pinnell, but it's not normed nationally, and so that's why we don't use it. But we do show. It shows all kids and their growth because it's more diagnostic and it looks at the whole child and not just oral reading fluency, which is what Ames Web looks at. So that's really more the problem, is what we're reporting out at, but it's our instrument right now that we use at the elementary school.
I don't think any of us really see this as a problem at all. I mean, these were huge goals, and they're almost there. And
Right. We like them to be there, though. And I said to Sean today, I said, "Oh, what am I going to say?"
Hey, that's the whole idea of setting a goal,
Right.
I mean, is
Right.
to see where you're gonna, I mean, if you set the goal at 50% and it's easily attainable, then there's no work to do, so.
Right.
There's nothing else to reach for, so.
Right.
We commend you on just even, putting that goal up there, so.
Well, and like I said, we really focused on it this summer, and we have some good things in place for this year, so we'll monitor it, and I'll be back again after semester time to give you a new look at what this looks like. But thank you.
And for each grade, at each goal, we're showing improvement, right? So
Yes,
we're
yes.
heading in the right direction.
We are heading in the right direction. We always start lower than this, but we still like to finish above our goal. So, thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm going to jump in with third grade, and we do a little bit more testing than at the elementary school. Our STAR and DIBBLES in reading are both nationally normed, so I can use those two programs. And what I want you to call your attention to is the fall versus the spring score. And so what we're looking for is growth. And in reading on the STAR in the fall, we had 31% of our students were falling below the 25th percentile. In the spring, only 23% were falling below. So we had an 8% drop. It isn't on here. It was actually it was blank for our reading for our STAR scores, but we have them corrected. And so that's what we're looking for is a drop. We don't want kids below that 25th percentile, but we do want them above the 50th. So if you slide over, you'll see that in the fall, that 43% of our students were above the 50th percentile in the fall, but 63% were above in the spring. So we had a 20% rise in their scores. So that shows great improvement. Always remember we want a drop on the 25% and below and a rise in the 50% or above. Then DIBBLES is the other one that we use, and that's a 1-minute read that the kids do. It's called oral reading fluency. In the fall, we had 34% of our students were below the 25th, and in the spring, 27%. So we had a 7% drop, and that's good. We want that. Then let's look over to the 50th percentile. In the fall, we had 42% of our students were above the 50th, and in the spring, we had 49%, which was a 7% increase. But you're also going to see when we go to the next slide in math, and it's exactly what Shar pointed out, is we are doing better in math, and we weren't for a long time. So I think that it does. There is a certain amount of truth to what you said, Shar, is when you're looking at trying to improve scores, you're going to be doing, there's more intense work in that area, but we're certainly not forgetting about reading. So in math, once again, we do the STAR. And so in the fall, we had 12% of our students were below the 25th. And then in the spring, we had 8%, which was a 4% drop. And above the 50th, you can see some really nice numbers. So we had third graders that were coming in above the 50th. 75% of our kids were above the 50th when they came in, and they stayed there. So that was, that doesn't look like it's an increase, but of course they had a whole year's growth because it's nationally normed. The Ames is your 8-minute facts, just straight facts. And in the fall, we had 18% of our students were below the 25th, and in the spring there were only 6%, so we had a 12% drop. Now we're going to look for that rise on the 50th percentile. 59% were above the 50th in the fall, and 72% were above in the spring. So we had a 13% increase. Any questions?
So you have a winter benchmark also, so they take the test? Do they take the test also in the
They
winter?
do. So the winter is just, and that was already reported on. And it typically is, sometimes there's an increase and sometimes there's a decrease between fall or winter and spring, and that's pretty normal.
So did the expectations change between winter and spring? of
Yes,
what
they
year?
do. They need to be higher. Their score needs to be higher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Okay, the next report is the seclusion and restraint report by Mr. Baumgartner.
Okay, thank you for setting aside some time. Of course, it's mandated that I'm here to do the annual report for restraint and seclusion. All right, so this may not, parts of this may not be new information to you, but in 2011, the state of Wisconsin passed a statute that required reporting requirements as well as guidance, regulatory guidance in terms of restraint and seclusion of students in public schools. So the application here applies to special education and regular education students. So every student is covered here throughout the school district of Amery. It also applies to all school district staff. So whether you're a certified teacher, you're a paraeducator, you are a custodian, whether you are working to support students really in any way, even a student teacher would also fall under this regulatory requirement. So physical restraint, we've seen this probably many times since we've done this presentation, is a restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a student to freely move his or her torso, arms, legs, or head. And seclusion, the definition is the involuntary confinement of a student apart from other students in a room or area which the student is physically prevented from leaving. So use of physical restraint and seclusion, of course, the guidance here is that a student's behavior is only used when a student's behavior presents a clear, present, and imminent risk to the physical safety of students or others. That word imminent, we talk a lot about that when we're talking with staff in training. Imminent meaning that if I do not intervene, something will, there's a high likelihood someone will get hurt, something will happen, imminent. While situations are always subjective to a degree, we really try to really get staff to think about what that is. Will something happen? Will I prevent something from happening? And that's the only time that we should use physical restraint or seclusion in schools. So the reporting requirements here have not changed. Here, you're listening here, I'm the designee submitting this report to the board of the number of incidents and the total number of students involved, as well as the total number of students with disabilities involved in the incidents. This number gets reported out or could be reported out to the Office of Civil Rights, the Department of Education. Just recently, the Office of Civil Rights has begun doing some investigative work in physical restraint and seclusion. That started in January of just this year. And I think there are about 30-some investigative complaints that they're investigating throughout the United States. Not in Wisconsin at this point. So the purpose, really, and this is the same thing an OCR would be looking for, what are your evaluative requirements and practices around behavioral interventions? How are you using training to support positive environments and reduce the use of seclusion and restraint in schools? And of course, again, focusing on training. What are the needs? So here are our numbers for 2018 here in the School District of Amery. And we had 27 instances of seclusion. It just happens 27 instances of restraint as well. Those are not meeting apples to apples. Those are different circumstances there or incidents reported, although they could be in certain, it could include one and the other, right, in that short period of time. Total number of students involved, 11, and
students with disabilities, 10 of those. So what are training requirements? And I won't read this word for word, but the training requirements really speak to what we're doing with nonviolent crisis intervention and through the Crisis Prevention Institute. Now that's a training that of which Josh Gould is a trainer. We also have Chuck Wellman, and Nina Hutton has been a trainer for that as well for the last few years. And it really focuses on de-escalation techniques. So much of 90% of the training focuses on everything that comes before that decision where one might need to use physical restraint or seclusion. So we do have certified instructors here, which I just mentioned. It's the trainer of models. They do have periodic requirements where trainers get refreshed. They go up and get 2 or 3 days of training, focusing on de-escalation, appropriate decision-making response in stressful situations and managing risk, using disengagement and holding skills. And that just means that, that there are certain high-level and low-level skills in crisis prevention that staff are trained to use or not recommended to use, right? Certainly. So these were the trainings that happened this year. Just a little while ago on August 12th and 13th, we had about 57 staff trained. That could be counselors, general ed, special ed teachers, paraeducators. The administrative group has also been trained in CPI. And like I had mentioned previously, part of the reporting requirements is that we track this information. And one of the changes here this year is that we're going to house those incident reports in OASIS, which is a data system that we have evaluations, IEPs, Section 504 plans in there as well. So I think that'll increase the efficiency and organization of what we're doing when we report out numbers. So related initiatives and recommendations, you've heard this all the way down the line tonight, right? Positive behavioral interventions and supports. Looking at student behavior in terms of what is the function of that behavior so that we can intervene in a more appropriate way, whether that's a change to the environment or an instructional practice or a response that lessens the behavior. Increasing the number of staff trained in CPI, student engagement, trauma-sensitive schools, SEL, and of course, you're about to hear more on school-based mental health services and partnerships. And I've included a couple supplements in your board documents that speak to the evaluation of crisis intervention programs. I'm inclined to think that what we're doing, CPI, NCI, has a really good evidence base to support. However, take a look at that Council for Exceptional Children document. It has some nice guiding questions that every once in a while is good for us to revisit, as well as just a brief 10 tips for CPI so that you can really see that CPI is about all the things that lead up to potentially seclusion or restraint and keeping it from getting there. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those documents. Let me know if you have any questions.
So I see that you're required to report to the board what you did in the slide that says 2018-2019 incident report. Did you say you have to report something to the Office of Civil Rights as well as to the amount of incidents that occur every year, school year?
We don't have to report those to the Office of Civil Rights, but we do have to have that information in the event that was pulled.
So if they initiate an investigation, which they haven't in the state of Wisconsin, then you have to give them the report of all the incidents or just the one that they're investigating?
Well, potentially it could be all the incidents if there was an alleged practice of discrimination.
Okay.
Or based on a subgroup, if the data would bear out to say that, all groups here have a really high rate of restraint seclusion, the Department of Education or the Office of Civil Rights potentially could be triggered into that and say,
Sure.
Is there a pattern here?
And so you're just required to report to us district-wide. You don't have to put the gender or the age or anything like that. There were 27 incidents.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. We do have that information that can be broken down on the individual restraint and seclusion forms themselves, if that were a need.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Whenever there's a restraint, we have a narrative that goes with that, and all that's housed in pupil services, so we know who, what, when, where, all of that information. They would have no shortage of information from us if they wanted it.
All right,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, the next item on the agenda are the informational items, starting with the legislative update.
Okay, 2 items that have been introduced within the last 2 weeks in the state legislature. I'm not sure where either of them will end up. The first is called T21 legislation, which is to raise the smoking age in the state of Wisconsin from 18 to 21. And for those of us who are old enough, some in the room are, when they raised the drinking age from 18 to 21, that was met with some resistance. I'm not sure this one will lead, but it's picking up a lot of steam nationwide. It would affect many of our seniors if they were in that group. So that's out there. We'll see what happens there. The second of these 2 items is probably more present for us as a school district, and that is the state legislature is interested, at least some of them are interested in introducing a lead test, testing our water in all schools to make sure that it's quality and healthy. And that is probably in response to the number of cases that have happened nationwide in regards to having lead in the water. So that is something that's perhaps coming down the pike, and we would comply in whatever way we're supposed to comply, and we would do that without any question. So that's coming down the pike as well. The third item is not new legislation, but rather a response to our increased state aid. Our preliminary budget, which we brought to you a couple of months ago, that was dramatically changed by the increase in state aid. So when you see a finalized budget for your approval in September, it will reflect that. A lot of school systems are struggling with how to properly use those dollars because it wasn't something that most school systems expected to have occur. I guess it's a good problem to have a few extra dollars. In the research, I just read an article today, the research on increased dollars in the school system has a dramatic effect in a positive way on student success. So it's a very good thing. So those are some legislative updates from recent weeks.
All right, next would be the mental health grant by Ms. Johnson and Ms. Weisenbeck.
All right, I'm Kate Weisenbeck, the school counselor at Amery Middle School. And I'm Katie Johnson, the school psychologist at the elementary and middle schools. So last year we were awarded a $75,000 grant for the 2018-19 school year, funded by the Wisconsin DPI. We thought we probably should come and share with you guys what we did with that money. Before we get started with that, when we're talking about school-based mental health, we just really want to make sure that everybody understands that school-based mental health supports are not just for kids who are in crisis. They are not just for kids who are struggling or diagnosed with depression and anxiety. It really is everything in regards to social emotional learning. It's PBIS, it's trauma-sensitive school practices. So really it's a continuum from wellness to kids who are in mental health crisis. So just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that this is something that benefits all students and staff, actually. And we also thought you might want to know who are mental health providers in the schools. So that includes our school counselors, school psychologists, our student success coordinators, and our school nurse are all mental health providers. But if you take that a little further, we're all mental health providers in the schools. Mental health is part of what kids bring to the school day. So teachers are providing social emotional learning curriculum. They're meeting kids' needs every day. We're all providing those services. Okay, so our first objective with this goal was to increase student and staff knowledge, skills, and attitudes regarding mental health by 30%. We did meet that goal. We did a lot of different trainings this year. A lot more of this grant ended up being staff development than I think we thought it would be. Part of that is because of the change in the PDH system. So we had a lot of interest from staff. They wanted to learn more about these things. It seems to be something they're really passionate about. So there was kind of a hunger for more of that. So we ended up doing a lot more staff trainings than we initially thought that we would.
We also wanted to ensure that 80% of our kids identified as needing mental health services received one or more contact with a mental health provider. And we were able to do that as well. We had our new student success coordinators this year, which helped us reach a lot more kids. We created some processes for streamlining help for kids and how that would work. We did parent education, screenings, trainings. And we defined a mental health provider broadly as a school-based mental health provider or a community-based mental health provider. But we ensured that every kid who needed it saw a mental health provider.
And then our third objective was to improve our district's ability to manage the mental health needs of our students by increasing our Wisconsin School Mental Health Needs Assessment score. That's a mouthful. But basically, we're going to look at this a little more in a couple more slides. But there's a framework that kind of dictates what you should have in place if you have a solid mental health framework. So really, we went through the needs assessment. We clicked on what we had, what we kind of had, and what was missing, and we tried to increase the score that way. So we did do that. Again, we'll talk about that a little more later. The ways that we did it were some trainings, new interventions for students, and anything else on that one? You don't want to be here all night.
So one of our major activities has been screening. We've been doing our depression screening at the high school for almost a decade. And we continue to improve that every year. Every year we meet and we say what worked, what didn't work. We look at our data. We look at our data compared to the data for other screenings going on in Polk County and try to improve our services. We've actually been a resource to the Polk County Task Force as well as they bring their screenings to more and more districts and helping them set that up and come up with a good system for doing high school screening. And then this last year we also added a middle school screening. We felt it was really time to do screening in both of the buildings. And we designed it really intentionally as two very different screenings. Our high school looks at depression. Our middle school looks more at anxiety and stress. We wanted those screenings to look and feel different for kids and families. The middle school is more of a introduction to screening. This is a fun thing you can come do. It's now no pressure. It's normal. Everybody does this kind of thing. And then being able to work on stress and things that are part of all of our lives, whereas the high school one gets a little more into deeper mental health topics.
The next several slides go through all the different staff trainings that we offered in-house. So we're not going to go through all of these. I don't know, do you want to talk about them briefly?
Yeah. Well, the first one, the Through a Child's Eyes, that was our big in-service that we did in October that almost all staff attended. And we talked a lot about trauma. It was our introduction to our Trauma Sensitive Schools initiative. And we wanted to make sure everybody heard the same language. That was kind of the basis of what we did this year. We also did a showing, a community showing, staff showing, student showing of screenagers talking about use of phones, technology, social media, and then we were able to build off that throughout the school year as well. Did a screening of Paper Tigers, which is a movie dealing about mental health in schools and resiliency factors. We did 2 mental health first aid for youth trainings. Both of them were completely full. More people wanted to do it. These are 8-hour trainings done outside of the school day, and people wanted to be there and were asking for more.
And one was on a Saturday, so that's important. The other one we ran on a Wednesday from like 4:30 to 8, 2 Wednesdays in a row. So it was pretty awesome that people were willing to come in.
So we did ACEs training, adverse childhood experiences training for staff, and we broke that down by kind of elementary staff and secondary staff so that it would really meet their needs. We brought back Dr. Harris, who did our October training, and we brought him in. It's on here twice, you'll see. to do some webinars with us where he took that information and went further for staff who were interested, because he was so well received in the fall. We wanted to bring him back and go further there.
And also to give staff the opportunity to ask some like specific questions. So
Yeah.
that was great. So half of the session, he would just answer staff's questions.
Yep.
And give them some strategies.
The resilience movie is a follow-up to Paper Tigers, more into what can we do to build resiliency in our kids. We did QPR training, which is question, persuade, refer. So kind of like everyone should have CPR training to deal with physical health. QPR is about mental health, and so we brought that in, trained our staff. We also brought in our coaches and trained them in those mental health strategies so that they can go out and do that work. We did some training on Second Step, which is our social emotional learning curriculum in the middle school as we expand that up. Pyramid training, we supported that initiative at the 4K level, doing some training there, and that's more of the mental health for young educators of young children. You've heard about that from Cheryl before. We did a counseling 101 to try to demystify what is mental health counseling, and had a counselor come in and talk about what it looks like, how kids might get into counseling, how that'll go for them, so that people understand that process. We did a training on understanding early childhood trauma. Was that the bus driver one? Or is that, nope, that's separate. Okay. There's childhood trauma. We did another Dr. Harris one. We did some trauma-sensitive schools training that we did with our clubhouse and kitchen staff who weren't able to attend our fall training. We did a behavior training for bus drivers, and we did a ton of trauma-sensitive schools professional development training within our pupil services staff throughout the course of the school year in district.
So overall, we provided 1,900 hours of in-house training to our staff. So that's pretty awesome. That doesn't even include all the trainings we sent people to outside of district, as well as the curriculum development hours that was funded through the grant. So we're going to talk a little bit about the mental health framework again. The thing that I think is really interesting about this, and as we went through the grant last year, Katie and I really kind of learned more about it and realized how much it really fits into everything that we're doing. So if you look at the bottom, the foundation here, 8 out of the 10 things in place here really have to do with PBIS. And so in order to have a PBIS system that works, you need these things in place. Trauma-sensitive practices are up here, and in order to have trauma-sensitive practices that work, we need PBIS in place, and we need mental health supports in place. So it's really good to see how everything fits together with what we're already doing and what we've been working for. With this last grant, I think we're focusing more on the kids who are kind of up here, a little bit higher up, those kids in crisis. And as we got more into this and learned more, we really have learned that we need to really start down here and make sure that our foundation is really strong. If we don't start here and build all this stuff up, this will never get better. But it fits in with our student engagement initiative and our strategic planning, just all kinds of things. It really ties nicely in together with what we're already doing in the district. We also did some peer education with this grant. We dabbled with that a little bit. Positive peer pressure in the middle school and high school years is really important. We provided mental health lessons to all students in the middle school. We also dabbled with a youth advocacy group. It's through NAMI. It's called Raise Your Voice, and we're just kind of getting into that, but it's really about educating kids and then having them kind of go out and spread the word. And this is really about reducing stigma and getting people to understand that it's okay to talk about mental illness and mental wellness and things like that.
So looking forward, we want to continue that, like Kate said, that foundation and the universal level. That's where we want to target it. Make sure we fill all those gaps, make that foundation really strong. We're pretty good at intervening when kids are struggling, but we want to make sure that everything is really solid in what are we doing for prevention and building that solid core. We're going to continue implementation of our current programs and looking at best practice we're always looking at research. What are the best programs? What are the best strategies? What are we going to be using coming forward?
All right, so the exciting news that we have, thank you, Brad, for not stealing our thunder on this. We did apply for the second round of mental health grant and got that. That's $75,000 for this year, next year, so we have 2 more years of funding. We're super excited about that. We definitely need it, and I think the staff are very invested in it. The administration has been great supporting it, so it's really a great opportunity that we will continue to have some extra funding.
That's awesome.
So just real briefly, this next goal, as we've already talked about, the goal for the second round of grants is to just really keep working on our framework and filling any holes that we have, and really trying to make sure that our system is really solid. So we'll be working a lot with all of these different components here. And then ultimately, we want to see a reduction in the number of students feeling anxious and or depressed. So overall, this is what we're hoping to see.
But we wanted to thank everyone for supporting just staff and student wellness and mental health support. We wanted to just point out, I feel like you know this, we didn't want to beat you over the head with it, but research shows that this is the foundation to good academic learning. That in order to do that, we have to have this foundation of social emotional skills, coping skills, strong relationships, positive climate, all of those things. And that's going to result in decreased dropouts, increased attendance, reduced suspensions and expulsions, better health of our students, and of course our academic growth. All of these things are so important, and we just feel really lucky to work in a district where this is really supported.
We feel lucky as a district to have you and put in so much work in this. I feel as somebody who's been involved in education for a long time, in one way or another, that I don't see any other bigger issue facing our kids today other than mental health, family and home structure, what is going on in the community, what is going on in the outside influences for these kids. It is not the climate that we went to school in. It is not we all thought it was hard when we went to school. And it is, you couldn't pay, I don't think any of us, enough money to go back there to where these kids are today. What you guys have done is amazing. The dollars that it requires to put on these trainings, to get the staff the help that they need and the support that they need is amazing. I'm glad that you touched on the bus drivers, other support staff. They are so important. Our bus drivers, our janitors, especially in this school. I can't speak for every school, but in this school, they're amazing. Those bus drivers are the first people that those kids see, and they set a tone for the day. For those kids, it can make them or break them. So to have all those bus drivers, have that training is great. We have janitors that take kids in times of crisis, in times of, my own child was one who, if he behaved for a week, he got, a couple of hours with a janitor, and it made all the difference in his life. Thanks for doing what you're doing. This is amazing. Thanks for writing an extremely important and well-founded grant. To have this extra money is amazing. All the work that's went into grant writing, if anybody's ever written grants, knows how much work there is. And for you to devote your time to that, and for you to devote your time to the kids and the mental wellness of everybody in this district is amazing. Thank you.
It definitely shows that you're proactive and not reactive, and that's you're ahead of the curve, and that's what we thank you for.
Well, and these guys too, because
Yeah,
like we
it's
said,
all-
they have been
yeah.
very supportive and all these different initiatives, and
Yeah.
It's truly a team effort by everybody in this school. And so thanks to all.
And it's nice to hear about all the interest that has been by the other staff as well. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, girls.
Okay, on to action items. The first one is the mold policy, which I guess was talked about in the last couple board meetings. I tabled until today, so I think we're ready to make a decision on that today, hopefully.
There's no real smooth way to transition into mold, to be honest with you. But here we are. So you asked me to bring this back here to discuss further with a recommendation from George Sigsworth. George has made a recommendation to me that I'm going to recommend to you. He believes that we should opt for the $250,000 version of this policy for a 3-year option. In the logic in him doing so, he doesn't have any well-founded concerns that there's mold in any of the buildings, but the age of the elementary school at 52 years and the age of the high school at 43 years, could it happen? Certainly it could, based on the age of those buildings. So that would be his recommendation. This is an optional policy and can begin and end at any time. It's a matter of whether you want to do that or not. So here it is for you to see. There are 3 slides with 3 different options, 1, 2, and 3 years. 500,000, 250,000.
Well, we do save a lot of money by going with the 3-year option.
I guess my only question would be, I think this is a good idea, but the $250,000 policy is only like $1,200 less than a $500,000 policy over 3 years, so $400 a year. I guess
That's correct.
I would.
Did
I mean,
we?
It would almost seem like if we're going to opt for this insurance policy for $400 a year, to double it from $250,000 to $500,000 could be money well spent. But
Yeah, I think if you're going to take the risk on, I mean, if you're going to take the chance and buy this policy on risk that something would happen, I think we all know that any kind of time you get into mold and dealing with issues, or it can add up quickly, especially in a building our sizes. So if we are going to do this, I think.
So can you explain the 500K/500K?
I would have to turn that one over to you, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm sure I haven't had a conversation with Jim on this.
The only conversation I had with Jim was what he presented to me, but I think what they're getting at the 500K in terms of the two different the umbrella coverage for it. I think that's what that pertains to, is that it does cover if there's personnel loss, like loss of time for work, and also loss of materials in building. I think that's what it's pertaining to. I can get more clarification on if it helps more than probably the whole policy. It can have it spreads it out more, what it actually covers and what it doesn't. But I think that's what he's getting at, is that there's coverage for, say, staff is exposed and they had to be out of work, versus material and supplies, abating things and that kind of thing, I think. So
Yeah.
is that what you're getting at?
Yep, and then
Yeah.
it also is, obviously recommendation is we should have some kind of coverage.
Yes, yeah.
And
And I
who
got
put this slide
clarification. I
together?
email. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Who put this slide together? Who made
Jim.
that? Jim did this on
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say also, just kind of on the point you're talking about the need for it, I think just based on the work that we are doing right now at the schools, because of the moisture getting in, I think that's an indication that would be my 2 cents on it, that's very good to have, because I was thinking, okay, anytime where moisture can get in, mold can happen, and you don't even know it's there until you do know it's there. And that's, I think that we do have wood around too, which obviously is more susceptible, so I know that a lot of people think schools are built out of brick and things, but mold can occur in that as well. So I think it's a good idea for that sense. So.
Did you find out whether you could, where this is, when we do, if we do intend to enact this 3-year option, can that be paid annually over 3 years, or do you have to pay the 10 or 11,000 up front? I mean, I don't know.
That I did not ask him, so I
Okay.
can find out though. I can email you guys with that, but I did not find
I
that out.
don't know if that makes sense.
I'm
That's
assuming.
not going to make a difference for our
Yeah.
decision, but for budgeting, I can.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you could probably give you a couple different options. I would think you could pay it yearly or all at once. I would think it'd be yearly though. I don't think they would be all at once, but I could be wrong on that. But
Well, you would think at a cost savings of over $6,000, they'd want the money up front.
you would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That makes
it's probably.
sense. I mean,
I'd
if
lean
it was
towards
3
that.
payments, I don't know that they'd give us
Yeah.
that much, but.
Yeah, I'd lean towards that as what they want,
But
because they
you're
want
locked
the
in a
money up
3-year
front.
contract,
Yeah.
that's where they're
Right.
giving us a discount too.
Yep.
Yeah. Otherwise, it'd be more like, year to year if you're paying each year, so definitely, yeah.
Okay, Is there any more questions or discussions, or?
I move that the district opt for the 3-year option for the mold insurance policy for the $500,000 coverage in the total of $11,338.24 for premium.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries 4-1.
Okay, we'll work with Jim and get that rolling at Beadle.
All right, the next action item are the athletic code updates by our new athletic director, Mr. Fern.
I can say that maybe there was a little mold on our athletic code, so that's what I just want to say from an outsider coming in, my background school counseling, and to see the focus, so I've been here since July 1st. We haven't sat down, I mean, we have a little bit, but we're not focused on what's our school report card, what are test scores. We're focused on taking care of the things that our kids need first, and then the learning will follow. That's not happening at every school. I've been in schools where there's just banners of here's how we score on the ACT and those type of things. But a lot of our work this summer has been in this professional development. The next 3 days is going to be focused on how do we take care of our kids first. So that's awesome. In terms of the athletic code, it's not something fun to talk about. I don't sit in my office waiting for athletic code violations to happen. But when they do happen, they're a big deal. We need to have a uniform way in how we handle those situations. And I'll just give you an athletic update. All 6 sports at the varsity level and lower levels are underway. We have 177 kids participating at the high school in our 6 sports, which is 37% of our high school population. So in terms of athletic code violations, Josh could elaborate more on this, but it's probably 5 to 10 a year is what we deal with. My first conversation one of my first conversations in late June, Josh had this 20-page document called the Athletic Code, and there was some chicken scratch on there, and he said, hey, I started working on this. I think this would be a good idea for you to dig a little deeper in because I'm going to be dealing with that primarily. So that's how we kind of got to this point. Josh and I sat down. We made some recommendations to each other. We then met with our head coaches on July 15th. We gave numerous head coaches an opportunity to come in. I think there was 7 of us in the room. Got their feedback, and then we said we'll take their feedback and bring it to the board. So that's kind of how we got to this point. So, go to the next slide here. So, I mean, my guiding principles, this is just kind of my belief. It's not my athletic code, but as I'm trying to wrap my brain around it, athletics are a privilege and not a right. My background's a counselor, so I always want to, things aren't always black and white in my world, but with athletic code violations, I'll say 99% of the time you have to be, it's got to be black and white. And then honesty, we're going to get into more honesty in this athletic code. But just like adults, when we make mistakes, we need to be honest about it. Mistakes happen. And I really want to promote that within our athletic code and our student body. So we'll get into that a little more. It's a 20-page document. Most of the document is focused on the athletic side of things, but we do have 2 groups. We have Group A and Group B, and then this is kind of our agenda. But we'll go to the next slide, and you can see Groups A and B. Here's Group A is the athletics, Group B is the activities, both very, very important, equally as important. But we're going to spend more of our time focused on the athletic side of things during this presentation. A lot of opportunities on there. So the first thing, attendance. We didn't have any issues with attendance, but we expect our kids to be at school by 9 o'clock every day if they want to participate